Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Getting Started with CK-12 Adaptive Practice and Assignments. I'm Katie, one of the CK-12 team members, and my colleague Lindsay and I will be running today's webinar.
Before we get started with the main content of today's webinar, let's make sure everyone is comfortable with our Zoom webinar platform. You should see two different options on your Zoom screen, one for Q&A and one for chat. During today's presentation, whenever you have a question about CK-12, please post it in the Q&A window. That's where we're going to pause and take questions for the presenters' Q&A. The chat window is a place for community conversation. We would love for you guys all to introduce yourselves. If you're an educator, feel free to share where you live or the subject that you teach. Just make sure in the chat window that you're sending any general posts to all panelists and attendees. You need to change that, otherwise it's just going to come to the panelists. But in the chat window, we want everybody to see it, so all panelists and attendees. Also, while we don't anticipate any technical issues during our broadcast, if you're having any trouble with your video or your sound, please let us know in either window.
So in this webinar, we'll be covering the following topics. First, CK-12's adaptive practice system. So this includes our intelligence system, which has over 150,000 questions, and it adapts to students by challenging them with harder questions or recommending resources. We'll then talk about CK-12 classes, how to create and manage classes, along with the features such as sharing content, hosting discussions, making assignments, and more. Now note that if you use an integrated learning management system, you do not need to create separate classes within CK-12. And then finally, we'll talk about assignments and student progress. So assigning practice and other modalities, and then seeing student work, including answers, levels, and time spent through CK-12 classes, and that will be applicable to other learning management systems too. Our main goal is that by the end of this session, you understand how our adaptive practice system works. You can assign practice and other modalities to your classes, and you can monitor student progress. So I'd like to launch a poll right now to find out a little bit more about your experience with adaptive practice. So we'll get that poll up on the screen. And it should start with the first question. So when it goes up there, how familiar are you with the CK-12 adaptive practice tool? Are you new to practice?
Katie, I'm not seeing the poll yet. I don't know. I think Star's on there too. I don't know if we see.
It looks like she's trying to get it up there. So let's give her a sec to get that live.
We can always come back to the poll too.
Oh, there we go.
It is.
Perfect. So first one, how familiar are you with the adaptive practice tool? So basically this helps us get an idea of how we should tailor this particular webinar. So are most of you new to the practice? Do you use it sometimes, frequently? Or maybe you've even taken practice and occasionally customized it into a quiz. So that's question number one. And then the second part is talking about the different modality types that we have on here that you can assign to your students. So that starts with adaptive practice, which is kind of our core focus today, as well as quizzes, reads, our new combined reads and practice option in our 2.0 Flexbooks. And if that means nothing to you, just don't check it. Videos, sims, our other interactives, which we call Plex, real-world applications, or maybe you're brand new to our assignments and practice and everything, and you haven't assigned any of these yet, which is totally awesome because this is our Getting Started webinar. So let us know for that assignment, even if you've assigned it through a learning management system and not through CK-12, the same applies. We're just trying to get an idea of what you have done and how much this group of people on today's webinar, kind of what their background is to start. So we'll give you a second or two to kind of wrap that up, see how things are going, and go from there.
Meanwhile, thanks to everybody who's introducing themselves in chat. Again, if you're sending it in the chat window, you might want to change it to all panelists and attendees so everybody can read your message. But we've got people from all over the United States, and I think a few from around the world as well. All right, Katie, I think we're about ready to close this poll.
Yeah, let's wrap this up and share those results and see who's joined us today. So it looks like most of you are new to practice, which is right on target. This is a great chance for you guys to learn kind of what that looks like. Some of you guys have started to use it, and one or two of you guys have actually, used it frequently or customized that into practice. And so hopefully this will give you a little more clarity on steps for those pieces, or else a chance to kind of fill in some gaps and see what other things you might be able to assign. Some of you guys have already started exploring our 2.0 Flexbooks, and maybe kind of done one or two different modality types, which we'll go through today as we work through this poll. So I think with that, let's talk about what we are covering today.
Yeah, so by the end of today's session, you will be able to do the following things. The technology gods are not being kind to us today. Hang on, let me try this again. There we go. Okay, by the end of the session, you will be able to find appropriate practice for various concepts. You're going to be able to assign practice, reads, interactives, and other modalities. You'll create a new CK-12 class or make changes to an existing one. You'll know how to find detailed per question feedback on students, and you'll be able to quickly see the number of students in a class that have completed an assignment. So for those of you who will be taking a customizing CK-12 adaptive practice and assignments session sometime, we'll probably run that before the end of the school year. That more advanced session is going to cover the following topics. In that session, we're going to talk about customizing our practice into what we call quizzes, all the different settings for quizzes, adding concepts to a quiz, selecting and reordering questions, creating new questions, using CK-12's math editor, creating multi-concept assignments, reports for multi-concept assignments, and report for quizzes. So if you're wanting any additional help with any of these things on the screen right now, or with the CK-12 integration with various learning management systems like Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, and Edmodo, just be aware that this is a getting started webinar that focuses on the basics, and we're going to prioritize questions related to the basics during the webinar. But don't worry, we'll always stay on to address any more complex questions you might have that need a live demonstration at the end of our presentation.
Great, so we have created a handy resource page for each webinar this session. We can find it there, but more importantly, you can find it at the tiny URL listed at the top, that tinyurl.com/CK12practice. So that will add to the chat window shortly if it's not already in there. And you're welcome to access these and print these resource pages, save it to your desktop, and use it kind of as a reference while you're working on any assignment, if you're joining us for the Certified Educator program, or just when you're trying to use adaptive practice this year and you want a reference as you work. So with that, I think it's time to kind of move into adaptive practice. So for those of you that don't know, we're going to start by kind of giving you a broad overview. So what is it? This is a digital tool designed to meet students at their current level of understanding and help them master the next step for any concept. Because of that, our system will bump students up to available harder questions if they are successfully answering questions, or it will make recommendations. So it might stop them and tell them to read something, watch a video, check out an interactive to work with, and then kind of help them if they're finding that practice a little bit too challenging at that time. So why should you use it? First of all, you get access to the 150,000 plus questions that we have in our system. And if you assign that content, you see the report of student progress on that assigned work. That's true both if you assign it to a CK-12 class or if you're using that within a learning management system. And finally, where can you find our adaptive practice? So primarily everything that you want to look for on CK-12, you can find on the CK-12 website. And you can find it through any concept page or the adaptive practice icon on the main page. Or if you're using something like Canvas and Schoology through that platform. And then also there's a free CK-12 app that's available for all smartphones and tablets. And that tool provides the ability for students to practice at their own pace on any electronic device they have, whether they're in school, at home, on the bus, or on the way to a game.
And Katie just said it several times, but in case you missed it, our adaptive practice is free. Everything on CK-12 is free. We got several emails actually just this week of people saying, what's the cost? Is it free? And we keep telling people free means free. So all of this is free. And then she also said that there's a lot of different ways to access adaptive practice on our site. So I'm going to start by just walking you through in our keynote how practice works. And then I'm going to go live and do kind of a demo live on the site to show you this. But just to get you acquainted, one easy shortcut that you can go to when you're looking for practice is ck12.org/practice. So how our adaptive practice works. Our adaptive practice system is set up to challenge students to answer 10 questions correctly. Students will see this little message here at the top of their practice. It's going to say, get in the game, get 10 answers to complete your practice goal. Our system meets students where they are with 3 levels of questions, easy, medium, and hard. The system will match the student's level and will gradually increase or decrease difficulty depending on how students are performing. So this means that a student who is struggling may hit the goal of 10 correct with mostly easy questions, but a student who's more advanced would have more of a mix of level of questions. For teachers, this ensures that each student is progressively and appropriately challenged while maintaining a clear record of each student's level of understanding. Having questions that adapt to students' needs is awesome, but CK-12 even takes it to the next level by making content recommendations in the moment. If a student is struggling, our system is going to intervene and make recommendations of helpful resources like our reads or our videos. And I think this is really the magic to the system. If you're one of those teachers who's teaching 5 classes a day with 30 students in a class, it can be difficult to differentiate for all students in the moment, but our system's going to do the heavy lifting for you and ensure that students are being appropriately challenged and supported. So when you select practice for any concept, in this case, the concept is adding whole numbers, you're going to see this main screen. Okay, when you're logged into a teacher account, which if you guys are educators, you should have a teacher account. When you're logged into a teacher account, one of the first things you're going to see at the top is an option to assign this to your class. And you can just keep that button in mind right now because it's going to be relevant later on when we're talking about how to assign adaptive practice. To the far right, you're going to see the option to download practice as a worksheet. The icon in between that says customize will be discussed in more detail in the session customizing CK-12 adaptive practice and assignments. But you're always going to get an estimate of how long our system thinks it will take a student to answer 10 questions correctly. In this case, they think it'll take about 11 minutes. Because remember, this is an intelligent system. We've got a lot of data that will do the analytics here. At the bottom, in the prepare before you practice section, notice how our intelligent system assigns a percentage to different modalities that shows how student scores improve after studying that resource. Then, of course, there's the big orange button right there in the middle that's going to say start practicing. So that's what you see on this practice screen. But let's take a look at what students will see once they go and start practice. All right, I've got some numbers here to kind of walk you through this. So this first thing here, the navigation menu, it's going to return to the previous screen and allow the user to submit their work. We have a progress bar that displays the number of questions answered correctly. So you can see that our system has already set the goal of getting 10 correct. Just so you guys know, this is a system requirement and it cannot be changed by the teacher or the student. That's just the nature of the game here. We're trying to get 10 correct. You will see a battery charger over to the right. It's going to increase and decrease based on the student's streak. So sometimes it'll actually have like 3 times or 4 times if the student is getting several correct in a row. It'll also turn red and decrease if the student has missed several in a row. We have all different types of questions in practice. It could be multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, select all that apply. And then hints are available at the bottom left during practice for most all of our concepts. So when you select to get a hint, you can see that it's displaying a hint right there. You can use the got it button or the arrow button that allows you to cycle through the various hints provided. The scratch pad I'll show you in our live demo, but this is available for all questions if students need to use their mouse and write on the screen to solve a problem. And then there's the improve the question, which is gives you a chance to report an issue if you see that there's some sort of problem with a question or an answer, and that goes to the CK-12 staff so we can make any changes necessary to that question. All right, so let's put this all together and let me go live to our site.
And I think as Lindsay's switching over to there, just a reminder, we just got the first question in Q&A. So as she's doing this, feel free to type those questions into the Q&A window, and we'll try to answer them via text, or when she does this demo, we'll stop for Q&A kind of periodically throughout today's webinar.
Yes, absolutely. This is our homepage. If you guys haven't spent much time on our homepage, I can scroll down and I can show all of my subjects. So I can see all the subjects offered by CK-12. Since I'm logged in as a teacher, I see a variety of things down here. Notice there's an adaptive practice button here that I'll get to in a second. But one way to search for content is to use our search bar here in CK-12. So I'm going to get to practice from the search bar, which is one of many ways to do it. But let's start here for a minute. Say I am teaching geometry and that my students are currently studying the midpoint formula. So I'm going to type in midpoint formula, and you'll see as I'm typing that CK-12 is going to, recognize what it is that I'm wanting here. And I'm going to select midpoint formula. And anytime you search something through our search bar, you're going to get a lot of results that look like this. Notice that there's over 3,200 results for midpoint formula. That's just how many times that keyword or key term shows up in our resources. So I can always use some filters over to the left. I find that I like to use the categories. If I knew that I was looking for a read, I could select that. If I wanted a video, if I wanted a real world activity on midpoint formula, I could use some categories to filter and narrow this down. But at CK-12, we highlight up here really big and obviously, and it says concept here, the concept page for midpoint formula. And when I select that, I land on what we call a concept page, which shows all of the resources available for the midpoint formula. And so I've got some reads, and notice here we say we have 2 more reads. Here's videos, there's 10 more videos on the midpoint formula. We've got our Plex interactive, we've got some activities, we've got real world activities here, and we've got practice. So I just wanted to remind you guys that you can always search for anything. I mean, try this after the webinar. Search for something that you're teaching this week, something you're searching next week, and see if we have some resources that will help engage your students. So once on the concept page here, I can click on the practice and I can preview these questions here. Notice that I've got an option to assign to my class. I've got other options, again, that are more advanced to customize over here. But that is one way to get to practice, is from the search bar in our concept page, okay? I want to show you another way. And just a tip is anytime you click on the CK-12 logo, it's going to take you back to the home page. So that's one way I like to navigate our site. And if I scroll down here, I showed you earlier that we have these circles, that this is easy access to our simulations, our Plex, our adaptive practice, and the schools page. So if I click on adaptive practice, it takes me to ck12.org/practice. This is how it reroutes. And I can see all of the subjects that we have adaptive practice for. So I'm going to, let's look at physics. And if I go to motions in 2 dimensions, I want you to see, it's kind of hard to see because it's small, but over here in the far right corner, you can see that I have already attempted these practice questions, okay? So for projectile motion, for an object launched horizontally, I'm showing a 70%. And what that means is that I have completed 7 questions correctly out of my 10 that are required by our system. So it's showing that I'm 70% of the way to my goal of 10. And then I've answered 5 questions correctly and 2 questions correctly. So I could go back into those practices at any time and I could complete them, I could keep learning, and I could get my 10 correct and then even go beyond the 10. Okay, so that's what that means when you're looking at those numbers. But let me do a quick walkthrough. Let's go to motion in one dimension. Let's pick something fun. How about uniform acceleration? I'm not a science teacher, so I am going to be kind of blind on this one, but this is the page that I was showing you earlier, where we've got an assign to class button, download worksheet, start practicing. It thinks it could take about 5 minutes to get 10 questions correct. For somebody like me who hasn't been studying this, it would take more. But when I press start practicing, this is what it looks like live on our system. I'm showing 0 out of 10 right now. We've got the battery pack that's just kind of in a neutral zone here. And I can get a hint. I can use a scratch pad, which might be more helpful for math. I'm sure there are some science problems that people would want to work out as well. But as I work through, notice that I missed this, but I got a positive message that said, it's okay, keep going. We're very positive. Let's see if I can miss another one. Okay, check your work, then answer. It's a good tip. Notice that my battery pack is drained a little bit here, saying that I have missed several. Plot spoiler, I'm gonna miss this one too. All experts start as beginners. And I missed this one too. So your students would do much better at this, I'm sure. They would be taking it seriously. But what I wanted to show you was that I just missed 4 in a row. I just clicked on things and I typed in answers. And our system intervened, okay? So it says, hey, why don't you do this read on uniform acceleration? Maybe you would like to learn by doing this interactive, which is a simulation on Irwin and Ruthie. Maybe you want to do this Plex on uniform acceleration. So at CK-12, we're all about, learn anyhow, anyway, choose your own path to learning. So as you, the teacher, are maybe busy doing a lot of other things in the classroom or working with other students, your students who are doing adaptive practice, if they are struggling, we're going to recommend what they can do to help improve. And then your students who are answering questions correctly, remember that the questions are going to get harder and harder. And then maybe once they master one concept, they move on to the next concept, quicker than your students who are struggling. So students can take these recommendations or they can return to practice. I've got the option to stop for now. And this is the same report that you will be able to see as a teacher. Okay, I don't have too much data here because I didn't do very well. I have 0 correct, my best streak was 0, and I was working on practice for 2 minutes. But this is the data that would be meaningful for you as a teacher. You would see how they did toward their goal, and then the time, I think, is key. It's very interesting to know if students got 10 correct and they spent 5 minutes on it, or it took them 30 minutes to get the 10 correct. If you scroll down here, you're going to be able to see exactly how many questions. So I guess was served up probably a hard one first, and then it booted me back to, well, no, that's not true actually. But the system served me up 4 questions and I didn't answer any of them correctly. And you can see as you scroll down what exactly it was that I answered and what exactly it was that I missed. So you as a teacher will have the same report that a student will have. And remember, I could go back in and I could keep practicing, or I could go to the next concept. Okay, Katie, how are we doing on Q&A and whatnot? Maybe now's a good time to stop and see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions that have come in that maybe I can just kind of answer for 2 seconds verbally.
Sure, do it.
So one was a question about reviewing questions beforehand. So Lindsay showed you how you as a teacher can see what this looks like as a student. That same preview that she showed is exactly the same for a student. And then that customize button right there, that's the kicker to kick you into the quiz field, but that also would, if you did that and then you actually clicked into edit for any question type. So there's a little pencil edit icon right on there, and that will show you the full list of available questions for that particular topic. So you could actually preview the full list of questions if you needed to do so. Here's the case where you could add your own questions. You can't actually edit our questions. We don't want a whole bunch of millions of users wherever kind of updating content and changing questions for everyone, but you can create your own questions and add those to there and put that in a quiz. If you do that, you lose the adaptive component of our practice because we wouldn't want to override the choices you made for your students. But that is an option both to see questions as well as to kind of edit and create your own questions from there.
And this is an advanced thing. Katie just gave you a little bit of a preview here of what we talk about in the hour-long session on customizing practice. But I think it's important that you guys know that our system has this capability that you can, edit the questions to form a quiz. And like she said, you lose the adaptive capability.
Cool. So we have another question here that asks about class rosters being imported via Google Classroom. Lindsay's actually going to show how you assign content later in today's webinar. And if you have a class in Google Classroom, you wouldn't import it into CK-12. You would just assign our content from CK-12 to Google Classroom. So just know that that's kind of going from there. If you happen to find any error, maybe, I don't know, when Lindsay was showing you that screen with kind of the window and the scratch pad and all that, there's an improve this question option. So if for some reason you think that there's a question or you think the answer is a little too picky for science, maybe a really common misspelling isn't being counted for your students, you're welcome to kind of click on improve this question and let us know what that looks like, and we can go from there. And then the last question that we have live within here, so there's the improve this question option that Lindsay was showing. And then if you go you can pick your different pieces. If she goes back to that kind of stop for now option, as a teacher, you get to see the assign to class, the customize, and the download pieces from there. So I know most of those, if not all of them, are only available for teachers. And if there's any specific pieces on that, I will double check and get back to you on that piece as well. I think that's it. So with that, maybe we can kind of jump back into our training on that piece and
give me just a second to pull up the keynote again.
And while you're doing that, we had another question about Canvas. So just we're gonna say this about 17 different times today. If you are using Canvas or Schoology or Google Classroom, or you want to do practice in Edmodo, you wouldn't set up classes within CK-12. We are integrated with them, so you would assign content to or within those platforms. We have separate webinars specifically on those topics, and if you are having trouble finding them on our webinars page, just email us at Jumpstart or support, and we'll point those recordings out to you. So I think with that, we will move forward. Before we kind of switch into our CK-12 classes, we want to show you a video of one of our 2017 certified educators. This is Nathaniel Eugene. And he uses adaptive practice in innovative ways with his middle school math students.
There are three big reasons that I really want them to be on CK-12. The first thing I think is what it does, it allows them to improve, it allows them to extend the lesson that I'm teaching. So they could maybe build on skills that I can't cover in the classroom. And sometimes when they come to me, they have a lot of learning gaps. CK-12 allows them to focus on those skills that I can't touch on class.
So does 80 go into 1,000?
The question they're working on actually is slightly above grade level, but they trying to challenge themselves. So they're probably going to be for just a little while trying to figure it out. But that's one of the reasons I use it, so that our slightly higher kids could get an extra challenge. Another thing is it makes them very competitive, very motivated, and they tend to do better on standardized testing when they are that motivated. When you send kids to the board, you actually get to see them struggle. You see things that you really wouldn't notice if you're the one up front. So what I try to do is try to turn the class over to them so that it becomes more student-centered as opposed to just teacher-centered.
Plus 20 minus 36.
And then you have, well, what's 20 minus 36? Can you simplify 20 minus 36? By them being able to access the Plex activities, the Flex books, the videos, they choose the styles that they want to learn in.
I think CK-12 is very beneficial to me because when I don't understand a certain concept in the classroom, I usually just go look on CK-12 and he puts the assignment up there so like he can make us understand, and the first thing he always tells us to do is watch the videos and like use the reading to try to help us, and that really helped me out learning like polynomials, how to multiply them, factoring them.
It makes them more independent of me. And for me, it's more than just standardized testing. It's making them lifelong learners, independent learners, so they can actually go ahead of me and touch on topics that I haven't even covered yet, because they have that confidence that I can learn it in the way that I want to learn it.
Great. So hopefully that was kind of a little introduction to you guys on one teacher. We always find it helpful to share stories of actual users, and it's really cool for us to get to go visit them and see their classes. So speaking of classes, we are talking about CK-12 classes. So there are lots of ways to learn on CK-12, and this is an option to help you manage assigned work and see student progress. But as has already come up multiple times already, it's a great option for those of you guys who don't have a learning management system that's integrated with us. If you have Canvas, Schoology, Google Classroom, or you want to use Practice and Edmodo, those all have grade reports that work super well within those platforms and pull content from CK-12. So for the next little quick piece on classes, just kind of block that out and keep your classes in your learning platform. If you don't have a learning management system you're using and you want to work with the CK-12 classes, then this is an awesome option for you. So with that, what are classes? Classes enable educators, you can share resources, you can host group discussions, make assignments, and then see your student reports, which is super important. And so as I said, if you don't have one of those integrated management systems, this allows you to set up a class discussion, you can share modalities with students, you can assign that work, and as said before, track that progress. And so where you can get it is through the CK-12 classes link on your dashboard or the icon at the top of any CK-12 page. They're really accessible through the platform on a regular browser. The classes themselves wouldn't really be the same within an app like that.
All right. I'm going to take back over here. And again, we just shifted gears a little bit from what our adaptive practice looks like. And then I want to show you, if you do choose to use CK-12 classes to assign work and see student progress, this is where you find that and what you can expect. So I am back here on the home page and I am logged into a teacher account. And you'll notice up here at the top, I've got a teacher dashboard and I have classes. And so either one of these would get me to what I'm looking for. If I just go to my dashboard, you get some useful things like some of the new content that's being recommended, some things that I recently viewed, some content that's trending, some practice problems here. But over here, I can get to my classes where it says I've got 10 classes and just 14 members. Most of this was populated with some of our interns this summer at CK-12. I don't have full classes in here like you guys probably would. But when I clicked over to classes, the menu option changed up here. So again, I could come to my dashboard, or if I knew I was looking for classes, I could just select classes. And here's where I see that we've got an NFI class, a demo class, a 2018 CEP grades class, okay? But for you guys who might be setting up your first class, let's talk about how you could do that. If you logged in for the first time to classes, you probably get a CK-12 walkthrough that's gonna onboard you and show you how to do this. Since I've already logged in several times, I didn't get that, but essentially you would be prompted to press this plus sign button here. And I have the option to create a class or to join a class. So I'm going to create a class, and here's where I can give my class a name, and let's call it Hour 5. I don't know, what am I teaching today? I guess I'm teaching algebra. And I could type in an optional class description. I could select my subject here if I wanted to, and then you can pick, you know, a theme. We'll go for pink, and I can create my class. And so now we see my Hour 5 algebra class here. And when I go into that class, probably the first thing I'm going to want to do is figure out how to get my students into this class. And so when I press Add Students, I've got some options, okay? One option that you might choose to do is to invite students by email. So this is an option where I would email all of the students. Notice that there is a join code here. that's just 5 digits. So I could also just give my students the join code by writing that on my board, or I could email all of the students. You can see here that it says if students don't have email, I could also create student accounts if I wanted to type in first name, last name, unique username, and a password. That would be an option to getting students into my class. A couple more options is I could find existing students if I had been teaching, last year. If a lot of my students carried over to this year, I could find them already in my classes. Or if you need a CK-12 assist, you could ask us to help you upload a roster, and here are some instructions about how you would want to format the spreadsheet to get it to us, and then we could help you import in bulk into your classes. So you want to populate your classes with some students. But let me go back, and since this is a new class, there's not a whole lot to show you here. But let me go back to, I think our CEP grades is kind of a good example since it has some content in it. But classes are a place where you can share resources, you can assign work, and you can see progress. And so if I'm looking at the menu options that I see here on the left and within my class, I can click on assignments. And this allows the teacher to create assignments with due dates and review progress. And I'll talk more about reports. We recently just kind of updated this interface to give you the option to see. Right now I could see everything that I've assigned to this class, which mostly happened in July of 2018. But we have another tab that says available assignments, where anything that I've assigned to any class shows up in available assignments. In case I want to take something that I used last year for my hour 3 class, I can easily assign it now for my new class this year. So that's an interesting thing that's happening with this interface. I've got an option to create an assignment up there. Reports, we're going to walk through what a report looks like again here in a minute. But I would get a high-level overview here of reports. We have a new feature to download a CSV of your class report, which is very exciting. We have the option for a Q&A, which you can choose to do this in your classroom. If you like to have sort of a discussion forum and you want students to be able to post and ask questions, you can have Q&A. If that idea just terrifies you and you don't want students to have that sort of access to a discussion, under settings, you're able to turn off the Q&A if you want. You're also able to, again, find that class code or to set some of your email notifications. And then shared resources. This is a great place. As a teacher, you're able to share some resources if you just want, if you need a place of, hey, this is a great resource for you to check out that's separate from things that they're being assigned for a grade. And then members is where you can see the different students. So that was a super quick walkthrough of what you see when you go to classes. And again, we're going to talk about assignments and reports a little bit more. But what's going on with the Q&A? Do we have any questions right now that we should stop and address?
I think for the most part, we've been able to answer them. The biggest one was a couple people have asked kind of when they can view the custom, or like when they can join us for the next level version of this webinar. And that will be scheduled for later this year, but we do have the archived one from this summer. So if you just want to get kind of a preview of it, check stuff out, even if you won't be able to answer questions or ask questions live at that time, that archived version is at the bottom of our webinars page. You can go to ck12.org/webinars and then scroll down to the archived section of our webinars page. So my guess is most of you registered here. And if you go down to the topic on practice, our second one there is customizing practice. The first one there will get updated within about 24 hours. We'll actually put this recording of today's webinar in place of that getting started one. So you'll see the newest one within there. And then the customizing one, you're welcome to watch and check out at this time. So
that's exciting that people are already asking about the next level. So that's good that you guys are already thinking about that.
Yeah. So I think with that, most of them are kind of little specific questions on content or, how student views are different. And we'll talk a little bit about what students are seeing kind of in the next version of this or the next section within here. So I think you are set to continue from this point.
Oh, okay. Actually, before I just when I switched over to this, I want to show you guys, there's a new page that you're going to be getting an email about if you haven't already, or that we're going to be blasting out through social media. That this is our back to school page where we're advertising some of the exciting things that are new for 2018. And related to what we just talked about is, you can see that this is kind of our adaptive practice icon here for you asked and we delivered. So some of the enhancements in adaptive practice, we've added some flexibility in spacing. So we're doing better with alternative answers for our adaptive practice system, where for students, they don't put a space in between, for example, here 3 inches and 3 inches, both of those are going to be correct. We've run into a lot of districts who are having trouble with a Wi-Fi network. And so if a student's taking a quiz, before it might have booted them out, but students are going to be able to continue their quizzes on resuming Wi-Fi connectivity. We've got some other quiz capabilities here. And then, like I just showed you, downloading a CSV is a new exciting thing for your reports if you need to look at some data based on how students are doing. We also have newly organized the assignments, and then some exciting features that you guys have yet to look forward to coming up in October is that we're going to give you the ability to add a co-teacher to your CK-12 class. So for you guys who truly do have a co-teacher in your classroom and you need 2 people to be able to view reports and make assignments, this is going to be huge for you. We're going to give you the ability to hide classes. And then one of the most exciting things is we're working on a new layout, a new way of looking at student progress and student reports that's more of a heat map that's going to show you, at a glance how students are doing. And then you're also going to be able to hide correct answers for adaptive practice and quizzes until after the due date. So these are things to look forward to that are coming, sounds like later next month. And then if you wanted any information about our Flexbooks 2.0 or our college Flexbooks, Common Core Math, there's lots of other exciting updates here on the Back to Schools page. Maybe we can put that link in the chat window for anybody who hasn't gotten that via email yet. Okay, and then now I'm going to go back to Keynote. I just wanted to show you that. So, okay. Here we go. Katie, I think you're going to get us kicked off with assignments and reports.
Yes, I am. So the first thing we want to talk about is kind of that same what, why, where for assignments and reports. So what are assignments and reports? As we're going to talk about, educators can assign practice, quizzes, reads, videos, simulations, Plex, interactives, and real-world applications to their classes. So those are the options that you have for things to assign. And that's true both for CK-12 classes, as well as for Google, Classroom, Canvas, and Schoology, and then Edmodo allows you to assign practice there. And then why can you use it? You can create assignments so that you can see how your students are progressing, and then tailor teaching accordingly. And finally, where can you get it? So assignments can be created and reports accessed at ck12.org through any CK-12 class or through your integrated learning management system. So you do need to be kind of on a browser. That's your best option to assign content and go from there. And then if it happens to be practice, students would be able to do that within that practice app as well. So we've had a couple people ask kind of what are Plex, what are these things that you're talking about, these modalities. So we want to give you an idea and a feel for the different resources. These are what we consider our assignable core modalities, which are also the ways students can learn, even if you're not assigning them. So that starts with reads, our videos, Plex, and those are kind of our play, learn, interact, little exploratory options, our full simulations, our practice that we've been talking about, and then real-world applications. All of our resources have a unique URL that you can always copy and paste to share with others, or you could use the little green share a plane to share that content. But then assigning a particular modality is what will generate that student progress report for your teachers, as well as kind of the matching report with students for them to be able to view. So reporting on CK-12. Do not be intimidated by this chart. It's included in the session resource page that you can reference at any time. but we wanted to kind of just break it down and explain what the goal and action was for any particular thing that you assign within CK-12. So adaptive practice, what Lindsay was talking about earlier, the goal of students is to get 10 correct. And as soon as they start doing practice and get a score, they can turn that in at any time. So they could turn it in when they have 3 correct and they get a 30%. They could turn it in when they have all 10 correct and they get a full 100%. If you're doing a quiz, they could also stop their quiz and turn it in even if they haven't completed it. But that quiz, the goal would be all questions correct. So the percent would be out of 100. For our text, our reads, videos, our RWAs, once they read or watch it, they're just going to open that option and then they have the ability to turn it in. Some of those will auto turn in within a learning management system, but in general, they should be looking for a very clear turn in button, either orange or teal, as they're working their way through. And those, as well as our Plex interactives and our sims, which Plex, you have to try a challenge question, and simulations, you actually have to like click and start listening and watching the opening question before you get the option to do the turn in button. All of those give you a check mark or no credit in CK-12 classes. Now, if you've assigned that content within a learning management system for quizzes and practice, whatever score value you've given for that particular assignment, you get that matching percentage of that score value. So let's say you had 10 correct, like a 10% correct. So you had 1 out of 10 right, or 10% out of 100. If you assign that in a learning management system and gave 50 points to that assignment, you would then only have 5 of those points valid there. The other ones that check mark no credit for CK-12 would translate to a 0 within a score report in an LMS, or whatever point value you attach to it. They would get full credit or no credit. Because we're not really assessing what they're doing within that piece. We're really trying to say, did you actually take the time to do something and learn from this particular modality? And one little final note on there, our new 2.0 Flexbooks, if you're starting to use any of those, they actually combine the adaptive practice and the read into a single concept and assign it as one concept. So there's not a separate component or a separate report for that read. You just get your percentage score for the practice that's turned in from there.
All right, so if you are looking to assign a read or a real world activity or a video, you're going to be able to do it from the left side of the screen. You're looking at what we call a read right now that's on the Val A, but if you were looking at a real world activity or a video, you would still see over to the left here an assign to class option, okay? So when I would press assign to class, it's going to give me the option to assign to CK-12 classes, which is what I just previewed for you, or it's also going to give you the option to assign to Google Classroom. So those of you who are Google Classroom users, you might want to just try pressing one of these assign to class options, and it will ask you to link up to your Google Classroom, and you're off and running through Google Classroom. Okay, so on a read RWA video, you can assign to class here. Notice that this is another place where you could also assign your practice. On this drop-down menu, it would give me the assign option for practice here. For our Plex, if you need to assign a Plex, you can do it from the orange button at the top bar. Like Katie said, all of our resources have a URL that's unique as well. So if you're not interested in getting, any score passed back, but you're just wanting to share a resource, you could always just copy the URL and put it, on your classroom website or whatever, and have students access it that way. But if you are wanting to get, that check mark to know that students went in and interacted with this Plex, you would have to assign it. Our simulations, you're going to see the assign button in the same spot that's up at the top. And again, when you press that, it's going to ask you about Google Classroom or about CK-12 classes. And then again, talking about reports, I previewed this a little bit for you, but if you assign things through the classroom and you go over to the report section of your class, this is what it's going to look like, where you're going to see progress shown as turned in or not. You can notice that the class is vertical and the assignments are horizontal. Our students are organized by last name, or in this case, last initial for student privacy, but that's how they're listed. And then our brand new option gives you this button here to download the CSV file. And when you click on that, you're going to get a report that looks like this. It looks really jargony because I didn't mess with any of the spacing, but it's exporting that data so you can see how the student scored for each of those assignments, which is a handy printout for those of you guys who are trying to take these scores and put them in some sort of a grade book. When you're wanting to look at an individual report, you would click on the student's name. So here I clicked on Kaylin's report, and you can see that for most of the modalities, it's either a check or not based on how she accessed or how she explored those resources. But I can see that for the practice on scientific notation, she got 100%. She turned it in. It shows me the date. She only answered 9 of the 10 questions for notation and exponent, so she's at 90% for that. I get some at-a-glance scores just for Kaylin. Now, if I wanted a more detailed report, I could click on scientific notation and exponents, and that is where I would see for Kaylin the data up here of how many she got correct, what the best streak was, the time spent, and a skill level, and then a breakdown of what types of questions she answered. Okay, if I continued to scroll down that page, that's where I would see the timestamp of what time she attempted these questions, and then exactly what she was answering, what she missed, what she got correct. And Kaylin would have the ability to view this in her reports as well, and then the teacher is able to see it too. Just to give you an idea of, I've now switched over, these are screenshots from a student account in case you're curious of what does this look like from the student's end of it. Students see their latest assignments here. And so these would be the latest assignments for the students. They know exactly what they need to tackle. We've got some class activity here in case they're, in multiple classes across the school building that are using CK-12. It's breaking it up by classes. And then for students who are on more of a self-study, here are things that they haven't been assigned, but that they've been accessing as well. And then just a reminder, we have a Turnitin button, and this is crucial for students who are trying to get credit for something that you've assigned them. On CK-12, we've got this blue bar and an orange button. When you're in an LMS, a learning management system, sometimes it is a teal button, but the trick is to train your students to click on the Turnitin button after completing their practice. If they don't turn it in, then their score will not be reported. So this is a key step. If you're like, if Susie said she did her practice and you're not seeing it in your grade book, it is because probably she did not turn it in. So that's, I think, what I wanted to show you guys. What's happening in the way of questions, Katie?
So we have a couple questions. One was actually posted to the rest of you guys in the chat window about it looks like, this one says, it looks like CK-12 offers a great deal, but it may be difficult for gen ed teachers to use as opposed to using with a smaller individualized class. And we've been getting some great responses. So I love hearing how teachers are using CK-12 and the variety of ways. I know Lindsay and I have been in a number of classes, both gen ed and special education and private schools and public schools. So there are definitely ways to use it across the board, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that point at this point. So feel free to add those to the chat window. And then we have some questions that came into Q&A. And the first one is, I love these reports, but if you assign through Google Classroom, you can't see them at all. That's actually not correct. If you assign through Google Classroom, if you click onto the little CK-12 sign-in logo below any kid's score for a report, you will have access to that whole thing. We're actually doing a webinar on Google Classroom integration in the coming months, so definitely check that out, or the archived one, if you are curious about how that works. But you can definitely see the full detailed report in Google Classroom as well as in Canvas. Schoology, their end doesn't, based on the integration they allow us for, they work their way through it, and we can only push the score back to them. but you can, in some of the other ones, actually see the full piece from there. So I think from that point in time, we are getting some great answers and colleagues. So feel free to continue to chat within there and let us know as you have some questions. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through the last few pieces of here. We know we're kind of hitting that hour mark. We got a few more minutes left, and we'll talk through some final details for you guys, and then we'll stay on to answer any last questions. So with that, thank you for joining us today. The first thing I want to talk about is our tools and apps page. So this you can access from the footer of CK-12.org, as well as through that direct link at that top, that CK-12.org/tools and apps option. And this includes a number of things. One, the top 3 things on there are our 3 CK-12 apps. So our Flexbook app for offline use for all of our original Flexbooks, our practice app, which we talked about today, and then our physics simulations app, and the chemistry ones would eventually go in there. And then below that is a little more information about our integration with some of those learning management systems and also single sign-on options. And you can click on that piece and kind of learn a bit more and then sign up to get that working within your school as well. So definitely check that out, especially if you are interested in our apps or integrated systems. Our upcoming webinars. So we have 3 upcoming webinars during the month of October. So we'll switch over to that particular slide, and hopefully these will interest you. So on Wednesday, October 10th, our colleagues, not me, Katie, but our other Katie and our team, and Sonia will spend an hour showing you our CK-12 simulations and Plex interactives. They do a great job kind of explaining all the nitty-gritty pieces of them and some cool things and strategies for using them in your class. So I highly recommend you join us for that. On the 18th, you can join us for a 30-minute session on CK-12 integration with Google Classroom. This is a short little session. For those of you guys that we'll talk about the Certified Educator program in a second, but because it's short, it's not one of our core webinars, but it's definitely helpful if you are using Google Classroom and you want to access CK-12 content within there. And then at the end of the month, we'll be running an advanced Flexbook editing session. So if you joined us for getting started with Flexbooks, or you want to watch that and join us kind of for this next level, we'll talk about some advanced editing options, including embedding content, multimedia, as well as other pieces. So you can register for any of these at ck12.org/webinars. And then at the bottom, as Lindsay showed you, are our recordings of previous webinars if you can't make a live version for any reason. From there, we're going to talk once more just about that session resource page. That URL will get you to this particular PDF. And on the back side of it is that amazing chart that says, okay, what type of modality am I assigning? And what's the score percentage? And how does that work? And it's all there in quick little reference format for you. So definitely check that piece out. And then finally, the CK-12 Certified Educator program. So each summer we run an intensive professional development program for educators that want to become CK-12 certified. To do that, they attend a series of 5 or more live webinars. They watch 2 on-demand sessions, and they complete the matching assignments. If you're interested in becoming certified during the school year, this session today, as well as 2 out of the 3 for October, can count towards your live session requirement. Your matching assignment for today's particular session will show up in your confirmation email for any of you that attended today. That email goes out about 24 hours after the webinar ends. So you can expect that in about 24 hours and maybe 10 minutes or so. And that will have the link to the assignment if you want to get started on that piece. You can also learn more and sign up just to kind of get a general welcome and access to on-demand pieces at ck12.org/certified. Before we end this webinar, we want to encourage you to answer a short questionnaire that gives us feedback on both the content and the presentation of today's webinar, because we always look to improve your experience. The link to that form is tinyurl.com/ck12webinar 1819, since it is the 1819 school year. And that will get messaged to you in the chat window as well. It will be in that follow-up email that I just talked about. And just kind of one more note, if you're looking for documentation for today's webinar, if you are doing the Certified Educator program, we will send you full documentation at the end of that program. If for any reason you need specific documentation for your school or district stating that you made it to today's webinar, you can just email us at jumpstart@ck12.org, and we'll be happy to issue that particular documentation. So I think with that, thank you so much for joining us today. Please let me assure you that you'll continue to be supported by our team. We're happy to help, so you can send an email at any time to Jumpstart or support@ck12.org. Jumpstart more for like program questions, that's support@ck12.org if you have any technical questions on our site. And then don't forget to let your social networks know about CK12 and your participation in our webinars. So we're on all the socials as CK12 Foundation, or you can hashtag CK12. So I think at this point in time, Lindsay closed that so we can stay on. You are more than welcome to head out if you are good to go. But if you have any questions, we'll stay on briefly to answer any more questions coming in. So feel free to post those in the Q&A window. So it looks like so far we're just getting thanks for joining us. You're heading out for the day. We'll give you a minute or so to add any last thing in there, and then we'll go from there. So we do have one question that doesn't pertain to today's webinar, but as we said, we will stay on and answer any questions related to CK12. So this particular question says, if I share a read through Google Classroom, I don't get the highlight option in the Flexbook. Is there a way to utilize this option? So our highlighting option is actually an overlay over our content. And if you're sharing content to a learning management system, that overlay doesn't come because they have their own overlay. So one kind of workaround for that is if you share just the link to the whole Flexbook, students could access that on the ck12.org website and kind of not directly through Google Classroom, even though they would be able to access the link via Google Classroom. And then they could use the highlighting and note-taking options within CK12. And I would recommend that they log in with their Google Classroom email so that that account is tied cleanly from there. And then we have some questions on what type of info is required from the student to sign up. So that's actually kind of based on where you're coming from and how you're doing stuff. So if you're accessing CK12 through a learning management system, there's not a separate sign-up piece. If you're accessing CK12 directly, then it's generally kind of name and email. If you have students that are under 13 and don't have email addresses, there are options in CK12 classes to add students directly with kind of a username and password you create for them, and that way you can kind of be the point person for their account and still assign work from there. So it really depends if you're looking for specifics for your situation. Feel free to email support and we can answer that specifically. So I think from there we have answered all of these questions. If you have any more, please feel free to email us, and we hope to see you in a future webinar.